Hi everybody, my name is Maor and welcome to my channel. I'm talking to you from next to Los Angeles where we have an amazing workshop with about 20 participants, and the subject today is the divine reflection. Life is a mirror. What does it actually mean? So I'm going to take a few concepts that we are already familiar with and I'm going to put them together, try to explain just a little bit more about this divine reflection, the mirror concept, like as above as below, and what I actually mean when people in our life are actually showing us the different things that we need to learn about ourselves. So stay tuned. What does it mean, a divine reflection? One session I had with Bashar, when I asked him about how to create the perfect ideal workshop and got like 2 hours worth of tips and advices, he told me that you have to imagine the world as a huge infinite mirror. And at one time, that mirror shattered. And that actually means that there's a billion different small mirrors that are just flying in the void. But every time you look at one piece, what you see is all the other pieces. In other words, when you look close enough, everything becomes a reflection of everything else. Another interesting thing that he told me, and again, as a rule of this divine reflection, he said that when all human beings will stop eating animals, become vegetarian, vegan, or whatever, then the animal kingdom will reflect back that higher vibration of understanding, and their own system is going to change, and they will again become plant-based. Just like we are right now, they are reflecting back to us the fact that we are violent by having nature be violent as well. In other words, it might not necessarily work that way. The divine reflection means that everything around us reflects back to us our own experience. In other words, our children teach us about ourselves, our spouses, our parents, everybody that is around us. But it is way, way, way beyond that. For example, if you are in the supermarket shopping for something and there's somebody that is blocking the aisle, okay, what does that mean to you? You can ask them to move. Maybe it's a test for you because it's actually testing your patience. But I can promise you something. If it wouldn't bother you at all, this event would not happen. The same thing with being in the street, when you're driving your car. If you're one of those people that keep honking or get pissed off at people, or somebody cut your lane or something like that, and you say, motherfucker, why did he do that? If you have that in your life, it means that there is a lesson that you're not learning. In other words, the universe will continue to reflect back to you something that you need to work on. In that example, it's your patience or not accepting of reality, arguing with reality. Once you see that, for example, I was one of those drivers. I was impatient. I didn't have a lot of time. And that was 10 years ago maybe. And then when I understood it, I became aware of my own habits, understanding life is trying to teach me to be more patient. If I'm sitting stuck in a traffic line or in a traffic jam, it means that right now I need to accept the fact that I'm going to arrive at the meeting whenever I arrive. It has absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. And once you accept that, suddenly reality will stop reflecting back to you those things that you need to learn. In other words, you upped your game. You're one level up. We always do this throughout our life, but we don't necessarily understand that. So for example, my wife, my spouse, the love of my life, she reflects back to all these lessons because when I'm judging her, I'm actually having 3 fingers pointing back at me, right? So it's 1 finger pointing at the person, 3 fingers for me for my lesson, and 1 finger pointing to God, because some people actually prefer to just blame reality for their own faults, So when I'm judging her for having an ego, for not seeing my needs, for not doing something in complete cooperation with me, I'm actually looking inside myself, because the universe would not have shown me something unless there's something for me to learn. So if, for example, I'm blaming her for having a big ego, that means that I'm reflecting back my own huge ego of always thinking that I am right and always thinking that I know better than others and stuff like that. So there's something for me to learn there. But everything, once you become aware of the divine reflection concept, you start understanding that everything in life is a direct reflection of your own consciousness, including your manifestation abilities. In other words, like we say in the law of the magnet law, the law of attraction, that everything in reality is just a mirror. It reflects back what you feel and who you are. That's why the people who are more wealthy in the world, they're not the smartest people in the world. It's the people that believe in themselves the most. So their heart and their mind is aligned, meaning their belief system and what they feel about themselves, are aligned, and their heart emanates that as a vibration or frequency to the universe, and that reflects back as a mirror because it doesn't have a mind of its own. In other words, it will reflect back whatever is given to it, positive or negative. The dual way of positive and negative thinking is it just belongs to us. It doesn't belong to the creation itself, to that onion of layer of understanding, of tricks, of algorithm that reality actually is. So think about your own life. Think about what reflections you have but you don't see. Because again, if you would have seen them all the time, you wouldn't need them to reflect back to you the lessons that you need to learn. You would have learned by yourself. And we all have this, we all grow eventually spiritually, even if some of us do it as fast as a turtle, and some of us choose to do it like as fast as a bunny, using, advanced workshops, psychedelics, deep meditations, and all these things that are available to everybody right now. So you can learn very, very slowly. But I can tell you that most people are still partly asleep. In other words, they don't see the things that they need to see in order to eventually win this game, in order to conclude this game, in order to move up the levels faster. I believe that the people who are following me are a little bit more mental, and I believe that you guys are already aware that you are playing this amazing game of being a human being for a very short time, and I believe that you understand that happiness is highly coordinated or highly correlated with our spiritual path, with our understanding, with becoming more aware, more accepting of things. And this is one of those concepts that you begin to understand that everything really is a reflection. So in other words, if something doesn't work out in your life, a relationship, even, I'm right now in a hotel, something was missing in the hotel with one of the participants' rooms. And I asked them, why did it happen to you specifically? And the subconscious or the guidance immediately thinks about that as a reflection. For example, if two participants don't get along, why are they put together? They're put together to learn more about how we do get along, what patience we have to endure, what part of them I don't like, and that is a reflection of the part of me that I don't like. And then I need to, again, self-reflect and understand what is missing inside myself. What is that void that I'm trying to fill? What am I not really satisfied from? And again, everything that I look outside of myself and I judge, my country, my people, animals, the person that cleans the street, the person that sells me something, everyone that I judge is just a reflection of an internal judgment. Now, I know for some of us, with a spiritual ego and everything, it's hard for us to admit that we are flawless. Or we think that we are flawless, and it's hard for us to admit that we have some things that we still need to work on. And therefore, it's really easy to judge everybody else. You have no idea, okay, how much time we spend criticizing and judging other people and not looking within ourselves instead. How much we are putting the energy on the things that we don't actually want by criticizing, judging, or gossiping and stuff like that, instead of putting the energy that we have, which we are co-creators, we are conscious creators, we have energy using our thoughts and our emotions and our beliefs on the positive things that we actually want. In other words, I'm concentrating all the time on the world that I don't actually want by complaining about it, and instead of concentrating on the world that I actually want. I want to create a divine, a dream-like universe or a heaven for all the human beings. And the work we need to do to shift from one side to the other is a work of self-reflection, is a work of introspection, is a work of growing our spiritual, our heart, opening ourselves up. And again, these are the type of exercises that can really help us along the way, because most of us use our mental ability, our logic, our mind in order to grow ourselves. We began searching by seeking knowledge, asking all these questions. So it begins from the mind, but then it moves into the spiritual, emotional aspect. Just like if you guys will see the videos that I did 3 or 4 years ago, they're very different than the videos that I'm doing today. The frequency of the planet is actually changing, and we're changing with it. So again, the divine reflection, think about all those little mirrors. Like a big tree creates one seed, or like every cell in our body has all the information on how to create other cells by containing the DNA. Everything is contained in fractals inside each other. You can see also, by the way, that we are walking on the energy of the planet. The planet is actually circling around the sun is actually circling around the galaxy, up all the way, divine reflection, and down all the way into the atom, that you have the actual protons in the middle and the electrons turning around them. So it's all in some way repetitive, and the divine reflection can be seen within ourselves in this level, but it can be seen above and below. Right now we are receiving, for example, energy from the central sun into our sun, and that emanates back to the planet, and that actually changes it and creates a higher vibration in everyone. Nobody understands how much we're changing, but if you look at yourself like how you were 5 years ago, you would be a completely different person, okay? You don't even remember who you are. You changed your friends, you changed your life, you changed your mind, you're beginning to see things where they weren't before. We are changing, and the divine reflection is one of those tips or tricks that we can actually use to become more aware of ourselves. And of course, if you have any comments or any questions that you'd like to give about the divine reflection, your own experiences, things that you have discovered, things that we didn't talk about in this video, of course, you can write it down in the comment section below. And if you want to join one of the life-changing workshops that we have around the world, I have about 8 events a year in different countries. You can check out my schedule at maor.com. Thank you very much, namaste, and I will see you in my next video.